Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's Mr. God, he's quick today. Let's get legals ready, I suppose. Always helps, doesn't it? Let's have a look. Mr. Brown? Hello? Hello?
Good morning, Ryan. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. One sec, let me just get the legals out of the way. Nothing discussed on this basis session constitutes trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ Global Limited, Traders PIQ or PIQ Suite, or its affiliates, including the hosts with the mosts, which is Mr. Brown and myself. I'm a little bit unnerved, I'm not going to lie, Mr. Brown.
Why?
Because...
Oh, hello. Is anybody there?
For those that
Ryan.
don't...
Sorry.
Yes.
You went, I'm a little bit unnerved, and then went totally silent. And I don't know whether
Oh,
that was just
sorry.
for me or for everyone else.
No, sorry. I thought, oh no, it's because Rich Bernard was calling me, so he's got to stop calling me. One
Oh, I
sec, he's
see. Well,
on.
that must have broken our space somehow.
Yeah, right. I was like, oh God, this is not a good. So for those who don't know, Rich Bernard is my dear friend, also on the board of PIQ and our CFO. So if he's ringing, it's not normally a good thing at this time in the morning. So I shit myself. There we go. Anyway, how are you?
Yeah, I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. How are you?
I'm all right, mate. I'm not too bad. What's happening? Get
Good, good,
cracking.
good,
Let's
good.
get cracking.
Yes, indeed. Let's crack on. Good morning, all. It was a bit of a quiet day, to be honest with you, yesterday. Markets seeming to spend most of the day sort of hunting, but really failing to find a
Pardon?
catalyst
Doing
to
what?
hunting,
Oh, with a H. Okay.
searching. Yes. I was told off for my language yesterday, so I'm trying to behave
Well,
this morning.
we are going out for sponsorships. Buy your
Yeah,
bets.
maybe I'll get some of this bloody sponsorship at some point, but that's
Beers,
another
mate.
matter.
Beers. Payment in beers.
So yes, the market's trying but failing ultimately to find a catalyst to drive price action yesterday, which resulted in a relatively subdued day. The S&P 500 closing down by around 0.2%, though we did see some modest gains in the tech sector, with the NASDAQ up by around 0.2%. In the Treasury complex, there was selling across the curve once more, with the curve continuing to steepen as the 2s10s rose by around 4 basis points, north of 20 basis points once more. While in the foreign exchange space, that's selling in the Treasury space, but also some month-end demand, pushing the dollar to a high of 101 per the dollar index, which was up by about 0.6% on the day. Other G10s had a bit of a rollercoaster ride. We did see some dollar weakness earlier on in the day, and then dollar demand came in through the New York session. So the euro ended the day down about 0.5%, giving up a move north of the 112 handle for the first time in just over a year. And we had some notable softness coming through in other G10s as well, with the Aussie, the Kiwi, and the yen all down by around about 1%. In the commodity space, gold up again, a fifth straight daily gain for gold, with a new all-time high for the yellow metal, north of $2,670 an ounce. We also saw in crude another buy the rumor, sell the fact trade on weather-related headlines. Obviously, crude had been firming earlier in the week. Yesterday, WTI traded down by about 2.5%, dipping back below $70 a barrel. In terms of news flow and headlines, again, relatively thin on the ground yesterday, although we have had more stimulus headlines out of China overnight, which we'll get on to momentarily. In terms of bits and bobs that happened yesterday, we did hear from external MPC member Megan Green down at the Bank of England. She was talking about how she would prefer a gradual approach to removing policy restriction, that current stance may not be as tight as previously thought. Not particularly surprising, given that Green dissented against the 25 basis point cut at the August meeting, and she has sort of marked out her station as one of the more hawkish members on the MPC. Elsewhere, yesterday we had a rather perplexing story via Bloomberg, which is that the Chinese and UK militaries have apparently been discussing some bilateral defence ties. Not entirely sure why or what the purpose of this is, but it is perhaps one to watch, given that the stance globally is very much anti-China at the moment.
Well,
it is a little bit of a head scratcher that we would
well,
be doing this one.
I See, I think it's like bilateral ties doesn't exactly mean we're getting into bed with them. So, oh, Alan, it sounds like someone's murdering a dog outside my house. Um, but no, yeah. So
Well,
I think these are just prudent things to do, right? Yeah, if they are, this, like it or not, China are a massive superpower. Even though they claim to be an emerging market, but that's not the point. That's a different story. So if we can kind of at least kind of be on friendly terms with them, I'm not against it. Put it that way.
Well, there we go. We disagree on that one, but never mind. Moving on, in the tech sector, a few bits and bobs there. OpenAI, there's been some shenanigans going on with them overnight. Their CTO is leaving. Also, a handful of other senior executives are leaving. They're also talking about ditching their non-profit model and giving Sam Altman some
Yeah.
equity in the firm.
This is
Um,
bonkers. So this is I love this because this is like the guys. Oh, Dario's laughing at something. So the guy, fucking Sam, is like, oh yeah, no, I'm doing it I'm just doing it for humanity, man. And then all of a sudden it becomes a multi-billion-dollar company. He's like, yeah, I'll have a bit of pie, please.
yeah, it's
Oh,
funny that, isn't it?
I yeah, nothing changes. Nothing changes your outlook like cash.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I mean,
and
part of
and
me
we are
goes,
talking, we're talking Scrooge McDuck levels of cash here as well. Let's be honest.
yeah, part of me goes, you can't really blame him
No,
for
exactly.
wanting to chase the funds. But then another part of me is like, actually, why don't you just cut the philanthropy bullshit and just say you're doing it
Yeah,
to make
no, just
yourself
come
rich?
clean. This is like, just mate,
Because
just
no
say,
one's
look,
gonna have a problem if you are.
no, this is it, right? It's this like half nonsense that's kind of just really frustrating. You're like, mate, just admit that you want to be on your boat with your birds, spraying some champagne. Live a little, but just be honest with yourself.
Exactly, and the rest of us.
Yeah,
Away from OpenAI, we did have earnings yesterday from Micron. They beat on both top and bottom lines. Their shares, and they issued some pretty strong guidance, actually well above market expectations for the coming quarter. They were up about 10% after hours, but interestingly, there was relatively little follow through in some of the other sort of semiconductor and chip maker stocks, Nvidia, Broadcom, etc. Didn't really go anywhere after hours. Also, just on earnings, we had earnings out from Jefferies yesterday. They missed on both top and bottom lines. Of course, the reason I bring this up is because Jefferies Q3 earnings are out about 2 weeks before the rest of the banking sector. So there may be a little bit of sort of expectation management into bank earnings, which begin on the 11th of October with
say the
JP
word, say the
Morgan.
word, say the word, say the word.
What, that they're a
Go on.
bellwether for the broader sector. There we
Yes,
go.
yes.
And I'm sure, Ryan, you might touch on this a little bit more, but China
Boy,
continuing to throw the kitchen sink at absolutely everything.
yeah.
They have been, there's a capital injection going into some of their banks of around $142 billion. And we've also heard from the Politburo overnight, who are saying that they're going to implement forceful interest rate cuts and that they will ensure the necessary fiscal spending to stabilize the economy. My sort of rule of thumb is you don't really want to be investing in a country that has a Politburo. But nonetheless, the Chinese equity market is up another sort of 3-4% this
I
morning.
think this is. So I'm just going to reply to like the main tweet. Actually, I'll see if I can put it on the jumper. I think this is a very good point that you made. Sorry to interrupt. Well, I'm not that sorry. We know what I'm like.
Well, I'm actually done anyway with that, so you
okay,
can
so
interrupt to your heart's content.
thank you. Well, I'll be interrupted myself, which is with
Well,
my multiple personalities is not
you could manage
unusual.
it, yeah.
Yeah. How do I share into the bloody jumbotron? Oh, there you go. I think I've done it. So basically, I think you're right. When me and Michael say that, let's not get carried away. We still won't be buying a Chinese stocks, sorry, equities and stuff. We're not saying short it. We're just saying that this is one of those best that just pretend it doesn't exist because it's very easy to do your ass in a market like this, especially with a country like China, which could just pull the rug at any moment. And if you want to punt, I suppose like people like love crypto and stuff, and if you like a high risk punt, then yeah, it's probably for you. But what me and Michael are saying is like we're not saying short it, but we're just saying it's not exactly a stock market that you know level heads should be playing. Is that a fair
No,
assumption? Is
I
that
think
kind
you're
of what?
absolutely right. I mean,
Oh,
I
stop
put
it!
out
Oh,
well,
stop it!
it's very similar to what I was saying earlier. I put out a message, about an hour ago or whatever it was. The first thing is this stimulus is going to boost the market, but it's not really going to change the direction of travel for the economy. The issues in China are structural in nature, as you rightly
Yeah.
said yesterday. We're talking about 20 basis points off triple R and all the rest of it, but at the same time, they're asking recently retired people to come back into the workforce, and youth unemployment is close to a record high. So,
Yeah.
this is not
This is
exactly a
it.
game changer
Exactly.
on that front. And then, of course, you've got the whole sort of government legislative side where if you are certainly on the physical side, investing in Chinese stocks, and of course, none of this is investment advice. But if you are, you're investing in a communist country which has a very, should we say, loose interpretation of property rights. So the
Balls. Yeah.
stocks that you think you own, you may not own them tomorrow morning if the wind starts blowing in a different direction. And if you own enough of them, you may even happen to go missing, and it might not even be your choice to go missing.
um.
So it's certainly a market that I would, not be touching with a 10-foot barge pole, stimulus or not, to be honest.
Do remind if we see you tomorrow, myself and Mr. Hewson. Do remind me to talk to you about Chinese billionaires and money laundering. This is not one for spaces, but definitely one for the pub.
Oh
Um,
God!
yeah,
Right, I'll
it's one of
remind you
those.
about that one.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. So anyway, so thank you for that. So let me just do some few headlines from myself. Firstly, from our friend Andrew Hart puts out a lovely little note. Firstly, U.S. Steel. So remember, U.S. Steel, Nippon Steel. This is kind of buyout that Nippon want to do, which is run into significant political headwinds. The arbitration board rules in favor of the deal. Remember that both Kamala Harris and Trump were kind of against it. But then Biden threw them both a bit of a lifeline by saying that we don't need to make a decision until after the election. So it's one to watch. We'll see what happens after the election. But I would say because the decision doesn't have to be made before the election, I would say it's probably more likely that a deal will be reached and Nippon will be allowed to buy US steel. But that's just my feeling on the matter. Regarding Apple, we heard yesterday that sales of foreign branded smartphones, including Apple's iPhone, in China fell nearly 13% in August year on year. Regarding the US port strikes that we've spoken about a few times on the show, there are now only 3 working days away from the pork strike cutoff, which is September 30th. Could impact 43 to 49% of all US imports and cost the economy $5 billion a day. Their stats from JP Morgan. Yeah, the concern is as well, we've heard that there might be some kind of sympathy strikes on the West Coast as well, which would be like, oh, well, we're not getting far away from a complete nationwide shutdown of containerized ports. So definitely one to watch. Uh, I'm no marine biologist, but from what I've read, it's one of those things where a week strike ends up being a month for trying to then unsort the strike because obviously all these containers build up and whatnot. Don't take my word for it. I genuinely just read it. I don't know if you felt my hands, you'll know I've never done a day of manual labor in my life. I've certainly not been around containers. Uh, and obviously, as Michael alluded to, the China stimulus has been the big one. I have posted up into the jumbotron and replied to this post with the blast. The full gamut of headlines from the Politburo, which there's a lot of them, and basically it's like they're trying to say everything possible to pump the markets. Keep an eye on that one. Obviously, regarding Taiwan tensions, a Japanese destroyer passed through the Strait of Taiwan for the first time ever over the lot in the past 24 hours. I believe I read as well that Australia and New Zealand have done the same thing. Just moving on to some PIQ headlines. I've just actually seeing on PIQ because obviously we've actually, I'm not sure if people are aware of this, but you can actually follow Twitter lists, my personally curated ones on PIQ Suite as well. And I've just seen that Deutsche Bank now expects a faster ECB rate cutting cycle with back-to-back 25 basis points cuts from December. But
That
anyway,
Oh,
go
sorry,
on.
just
Go
on
on.
that,
Yeah, go. Yeah,
because
move it. It's live markets, man. Quick, go. What's happening? Sorry.
fucking hell. HSBC, they changed their ECB call yesterday as well. They now see 25 basis point cuts every meeting from October to next
Ooh,
April, for what it's worth.
there you go. There you go. See, we're live, man. We're live. What else is going on PIQ from Reuters? So Taiwan raises the alarm about renewed military threats from an unstable China, which ties in nicely to what Michael was saying just now. Regarding oil prices, obviously we had the fall yesterday, but also Saudi Arabia, as we alluded to earlier on, have announced that they're no longer looking for that $100 a barrel target. Basically means that they know they're not going to get $100 and they need to recover market share. So it means they're going to pump, which is why we've seen a significant offer into crude markets today. This is basically, if you want to read between the lines, this is they know that the game is up in terms of trying to get oil higher. So they're like, fuck it, well, this double down and just, we'll sell more of it cheaper, but at least we'll get the market share, which is dwindling. Well, not dwindling, it's reducing. Again, just a quick update on Hurricane Helene, however you want to say it, as it barrels towards Florida. The big concern, obviously, big concern being at Category 4, it looks like it's going to be when it hits, but we're seeing reports at the moment that we could see storm surges up to 20 feet, which is 6 meters in some spots. So it could be a case of, as we've had in the past, where it isn't the wind that kind of does all the damage, it's the water. So one to keep an eye on that. But it does seem to be, if you're looking at the Gulf of Mexico, it does seem to be, it is well to the east of, the oil and nat gas infrastructure. So good news for oil and nat gas, not so good for the people that it's now barreling towards. Just moving on to some geopolitical headlines via our friends at News Squawk. US, France, and partners proposed an immediate 21-day ceasefire across the Lebanon-Israel border and called for a ceasefire in Gaza. Now, the Lebanon-Israel border ceasefire, or truce, whatever you want to call it, looks far more likely than the Gaza one. And we've had some senior US officials have said they expect the ceasefire deal to be implemented in the coming hours. That's along the Israeli-Lebanon border. There's a good chance that, I'm not confident. By the time you listen to this, it might have already happened. I'm not really sure. Oh, hang on. There you go. Whilst we've been on air, so 30 seconds ago, Israeli PM Netanyahu ordered easing of Lebanon strikes due to talks. Bosh! We're live, mate. We're live. What else we've got? Dozens of US troops have been deployed to Cyprus amid sharply escalating tensions. This is, don't read too much into this. This is just, what normally happens. The UK have already done it. The UK have got a significant base in Cyprus, and it's just a staging post in case it all kicks off. You'd rather they were prepared than not. The US is moving slightly further afield. US is reportedly preparing a $8 billion arms aid package for Ukraine. And one thing that I do remember reading on the train home last night about this was that there's some clause in this that allows the money to be spent buying new weapons directly from manufacturers, rather than in the past. A lot of the time when they say like X number of $1 billion worth of arms, basically they're saying that what that equates to in real life is they take that value of arms from the US military's stocks. So they're not actually buying arms, they're just sending that equivalent value to Ukraine. Whereas there's something in this latest deal which means they're basically allowing the arms to be bought directly from the producers. So we could see a bid in the defense stocks on the back of that, I guess. But again, I'm kind of clutching here. And finally, China's foreign ministry said that it's meeting with EU's top officials, and China is committed to de-escalating the foreign ministry. I think I said finance ministry. Committed to de-escalating the situation in Ukraine, and that's all I've got. But no, it's a busy day.
It is. It's a busy day ahead as well. We've already had a policy decision this morning as we started this call,
Yes,
actually, from the
exactly.
Swiss National Bank. Pretty much bang in line with expectations. The SNB delivering a 25 basis point cut to 1%. They repeated that they are willing to be active in the foreign exchange market as necessary, and noted that further cuts may be necessary in the coming quarters. Of course, the SNB only meet on a quarterly basis. Their next meeting in December, the market fully prices another 25 basis point move at that meeting. Although it is worth bearing in mind that with the SNB now having the policy rate at 1%, they are getting sort of perilously close to getting back to the zero interest rate days, which I don't think any central bank actively wants to get back to. But the
They shouldn't
SNB
do.
are apparently on their way there if they continue at the current rate. Anyway, in terms of the rest of the day, the remainder of the European session is relatively quiet. quiet with the data docket pretty empty, but things do pick up as we move into the afternoon. From the United States at 1:30 London time, we have the final estimate of second quarter GDP. That is expected to point to the economy having grown by 2.9% on an annualized quarter-on-quarter basis. That is a modest downward revision from the 3% that was the second estimate of that figure, although it would still represent the seventh quarter in the last 8 where the US economy has grown at an annualized rate north of 2%. We also have at the same time, the latest durable goods orders data. Durable goods orders in August set to have fallen by 2.7%. That is after a whopping 9.8% rise in July. It is worth noting that headline durable goods orders are often quite heavily skewed by what's going on with Boeing and their order book. So when you strip out defense and aircraft orders, orders are set to rise by 0.1% on the month compared to a 0.1% decline in July. So the core number is very much the one to watch there. And we also have the latest jobless claims figures from the United States at 1:30 as well. And the continuing claims print, which is expected at 1.828 million for a prior 1.829. That, of course, coincides with the September non-farm payrolls survey week. In terms of other things to keep an eye on today, we have further supply from the United States, a 7-year note auction at 6 o'clock this evening. Of course, the 5-year auction that we had yesterday stopped on the screws, which was exactly the same as the performance in the 2-year auction on Tuesday. It's a busy docket of central bank speakers ahead. We hear from ECB President Lagarde as well as the ECB Schnabel. Swiss National Bank Chair Jordan will be giving a press conference in about 10 minutes' time, and that's his last public appearance as the SNB chairman before he is replaced by Schlegel at the end of the month. And it's a busy slate of Fed speakers as well. We hear from Chair Powell, board members Cook, Barr, and Bowman and Kugler, as well as regional presidents Kashkari, Williams, and Collins throughout the afternoon. So obviously markets looking for clarity on the pace of further cuts and whether 50 basis points is now the sort of new cadence from the Fed. And last but by no means least, in terms of corporate earnings today, we hear from Costco after the market close later on. And again, just to use your favourite word, Ryan, they are perhaps a useful bellwether for consumer spending more broadly. And I've just been asked a question by someone, is capitalism broken? So I'm going to have a really fun morning tearing that apart.
Oh, God. Right. Well, I wish you luck on that. Oh, hang on. I've just realised my phone's locked. Right. I'm going to wish you luck on that. I've actually got the lovely Helen Thomas in 8 minutes' time for our weekly political blast. So do tune in on that one. I'll put up the thing very shortly. But yes, very much. Also, Michael, before you go, I've realised sometimes that I think if you hang up first, I think it doesn't record you as a co-host. So after we have our awkward silence at the end, let me hang up, and then I think that'll work. Cool.
I'm gonna need to hire an intern, unpaid, to help me with all this admin. I'm gonna go ring News Squawk and see if Henna's is free.
Oh, I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. Well, on that note, thank you for today. Obviously, we've gone a bit longer than normal, but there's been a lot to talk about with a lot happening during the show. Right, guys, thank you as always for listening in. Do tell your friends and your family. Talk about it over the dinner table. Say, oh, I'm listening to that awesome Ryan and Michael on the show. You should get involved. All that stuff. Do it for us. Guys, have a great one. If you are trading today, as always, keep it tight, and we will see you tomorrow. Time for the awkward silence.
Goodbye.
Bye.